Engaged anthropology. Well, I think we all have different definitions about what engagement means in anthropology. But for me, the main piece is the community-based element. For me, it's about doing anthropology that's in the service of the people with whom I affiliate during the research. And so I've always been propelled by that endeavor. My interest really from the get-go with anthropology was how to do it in a way that was useful socially and of service to the people where I positioned myself. And as a graduate student, I got really interested in a methodology that actually originates outside the discipline called participatory action research. A lot of anthropologists at the time were hand-wringing about, anthropology's unsavory colonial past and the ways in which anthropology has been done on people in objectifying ways, or I was very aware and concerned about this kind of politics. And so I was looking for ways to enter into collaboration with research informants and participants. And participatory action research is an intriguing kind of method that says, let's make the research project and the questions themselves be something that emerge from a dialogue with the people you're working with, right? So whatever setting you're in, whether there's an actual community-based group, which there was in my case, or whether it's just the people you end up in dialogue with and in relationship with, to allow the question and the topic to sort of come about as a result of that dialogue with those people. And so that's how I went about doing my dissertation research. My dissertation research took place in Russia, as all my research. And I ended up affiliating with a community-based group of feminist-oriented women activists. And I sort of came to them with this idea and this methodology and this set of preoccupations and said, is this something you would like to do? Would you like to work together and to try and figure out if there's a project we could engage in? And the outcome was, in fact, a project where we worked and critically examined international development assistance, NGOs, the NGO form, the funding that was offered to women activists at the time. And we ended up deciding to take some of those funds to enact a community-based project. I worked with members of this group to set up a women's crisis center in this provincial city in Russia. It maintains its community-based focus. And actually the current work I do is with the same people. So it's a second round of collaboration with the same people. And in my writing, I call it collaboration, the sequel. It's a little unusual, I think, for an anthropologist. It's not unusual for an anthropologist to maintain long-term connections and relationships, but it's relatively unusual, I think, to actually do a second community-based project with the same people. And this second project is quite different than the first, partly because we, the main protagonists, my Russian colleagues and I, shifted. When we began working together in the 1990s, I was then a graduate student, of course, and my colleagues were university-based, but very much involved as civic activists in the sort of NGO world and the civic activist sphere. So working outside, they created informal organizations. Feminist groups. So now, given the political context, they kind of move back to the university, and the university is the center of what they do. So our second project, our second collaboration, came about through that similar process of dialogue and thinking, well, what could we do together now? What kinds of work might we come across, and what questions appear to us? What seems most pressing? And out of that dialogue came the decision to design a research project that looked at new state-run youth organizations. So the kinds of organizations that began to emerge in the middle of the 2000s, and that my colleagues' students started to become involved in, right? So these were organizations, different kinds of organizations, from volunteer organizations, state-run organizations that tried to entice youth to get involved in volunteerism projects, helping orphans, helping the elderly, doing different forms of service, very similar to what was happening on American campuses at UMass via service learning. to other kinds of organizations that were much more sort of political in their orientation. So this second project is also collaborative, but rather different, and has its home, I suppose. It's based more in the university. The projects, I feel, aren't just mine. There are the tangible research results, but I guess looking at research as engaged, and it changes the goalposts. Looking at research as engaged and community-based, it opens things up so that you don't think about it as your property in the way that I think the academy scholarship encourages you to do. So beyond anything that pops up in my CV, right, a list of accomplishments, there's this diverse and fun and hard to track set of outcomes which aren't much to do with me at all, projects that other people who have enacted that were stimulated or popped up at around the same time, the kinds of relationships that formed, the new directions people took, the projects themselves, some of which remain. And so that's kind of a neat way. I think that's unique about engaged scholarship, when the way I construe it, community-based research projects, it's not all about me by a long stretch, and I find that that's a source of inspiration and encouragement. Well, I think I would give them the optimistic shtick. I would repeat some of what's proven to be true for me, and that is, if you care enough about the research, it'll get done, right? I make this pitch in general to people that in order to sustain a research agenda, in order to survive grad school, you got to do something you're passionate about. You've got to do something you care about enough. And for me, community-based engaged scholarship made it possible to sustain my own interest and commitment, because you're not alone in it, right? It's about something more than just yourself. I think academic scholarship can be very lonely. An academic career path can be lonely because we have these arcane, bizarre little things, our little rabbit warrens that we go up and that we can't share with many people. Now, in my experience, community-based research has meant that, hey, there's a bunch of people who care about this, who are invested in this beyond myself, right, and beyond this narrow band of scholars as well. And so for me, it's actually helped me. And when I sat down to write, do my own individual production of knowledge, or to make my own representations around this, I found it to be very buoying just to know that it's not just me. That other people have a stake in this, and that it matters elsewhere. So I guess I would say that. I would say I would encourage people rather than discourage them. I know that there are lots of real obstacles and difficulties, timing, for example, trying to get a community-based project up and running. It's more time consuming to build relations of trust, etc. Funding agencies look rather suspiciously at these things. They say, well, what's the outcome? What are the goals? And if you can't name those. So it's about walking a careful line and crafting projects, but allowing for that flexibility, allowing for, in my construction of what engaged scholarship means, allowing for direction to take form while you're actually in dialogue with people.